Linda and Thomas Harper step out of their car, hearts full of pride. Today is their daughter's wedding day. Ashley appears at the entrance, blocking their path. Her face is cold, unrecognizable. You're not invited to this wedding. Leave. Now. The words hit like a physical blow. 200 guests turn to stare. Whispers ripple through the crowd like wildfire. Ashley, sweetheart, what's happening? We don't understand. Linda's voice breaks. Thomas steps forward. Princess, it's Daddy. What's wrong with you? Ashley turns her back completely. Security will escort you out if you don't leave voluntarily. The wedding guests gasp audibly. How could a daughter do this to her own parents? Linda remembers Ashley at 7. Mommy, I want you at my wedding forever. Linda and Thomas walk toward their car in stunned silence, every step echoing their heartbreak. They sit in complete silence. Neither can process what just happened. Another memory. Ashley at 16 saying, "You're the best parents in the world. What did we do wrong?" Linda whispers. Thomas has no answer. Through the windshield, they watch guests entering what should have been their proudest moment. Something changes in Thomas's expression. The hurt transforms into something else entirely. They remember her engagement announcement. "I can't wait for you to walk me down the aisle, Daddy." Linda and Thomas lock eyes. 28 years of marriage. They know what the other is thinking. Thomas reaches for something in the glove compartment. His hands are steady now. "It's time," Thomas says quietly. He picks up his phone with deadly calm. What happens next will change everything. Ashley has no idea what's coming. Where are you watching from? What would you do if your own child humiliated you like this? Comment below and hit that like button. Thomas is about to make a decision that changes everything. The silence inside their car is deafening. Linda stares straight ahead, her mind replaying Ashley's cold words over and over. You're not invited. How do you process hearing those words from your own daughter? Thomas grips the steering wheel so tight his knuckles have turned white. 26 years of raising Ashley, of loving her unconditionally, and this is how it ends? Neither of them speaks. What is there to say when your child destroys you in front of 200 people? The wedding music drifts faintly from the church, a cruel reminder of what should have been the happiest day of their lives. Thomas finally releases his death grip on the steering wheel. His hands are shaking now, the adrenaline wearing off. Linda turns to look at her husband of 28 years, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Tom," she whispers, her voice barely audible. "What do we do wrong?" He doesn't answer because he doesn't know. They gave Ashley everything. Every opportunity, every advantage, every ounce of love they had. Through the windshield, they can see more guests hurrying into the church. The ceremony is about to begin. Their daughter is about to get married, and they're sitting in a parking lot like strangers. The contrast is devastating. Outside, elegantly dressed guests laugh and chat as they enter the beautiful church. Inside their car, two broken parents try to make sense of the unthinkable. Linda wipes her eyes with a tissue, trying to compose herself. "Maybe we should just go home," she suggests quietly. But Thomas isn't moving. He's staring at something in the glove compartment. Something important. Linda notices his gaze and follows it. There, barely visible, are the edges of several papers. Documents. Cards. Something that suddenly seems very significant in this moment of betrayal. The wedding bells begin to chime, signaling the start of the ceremony. They're banned from attending. Thomas reaches toward the glove compartment with deliberate, almost mechanical movements. His fingers close around a stack of papers, and he pulls them out slowly. Linda's breath catches as she recognizes what they are. Important documents. Credit cards. Receipts. Things that suddenly carry enormous weight in this moment. She watches her husband's face transform as he studies the papers. The hurt is still there, but something else is building underneath. Something harder. Something final. "Tom," she asks softly. He looks at her, and in his eyes, she sees a decision forming. A decision that will change everything. The question is no longer what they did wrong. The question is what they're going to do about it. Thomas spreads the papers across his lap, and Linda leans over to see them clearly. Bank statements, credit card bills, contract confirmations, payment schedules. Each document tells a story of sacrifice, of parents going above and beyond for their child's happiness. Months of planning, months of payments, months of excitement about giving Ashley the wedding of her dreams. Linda's finger traces one of the receipt totals, and she gasps softly at the number. All of this, she whispers. All of this, and she can't finish the sentence. Thomas's jaw tightens as he stares at the evidence of their love spread across his lap. Their daughter just humiliated them publicly, treated them like unwanted strangers. But they're not powerless. Through the windshield, they watch the final guest disappear into the church. The ceremony is beginning now. Ashley is walking down the aisle in the dress they helped her choose. In the church they helped decorate, surrounded by flowers they helped arrange. Every detail of this wedding has their fingerprints on it, their love woven into every decision. And she banned them from witnessing it. The irony is suffocating. Their own daughter is celebrating in a venue they made possible, but they're sitting outside like criminals. Thomas folds the papers carefully and places them back in a neat stack. His movements are calm now, purposeful. Linda recognizes this look. It's the same expression he had when he decided to start his own business 20 years ago. Linda and Thomas look at each other, and an entire conversation happens without words. 28 years of marriage has given them this ability to communicate in silence. She sees the question in his eyes, and slowly, deliberately, she nods. Yes, whatever he's thinking, whatever decision he's making, she's with him. They've been a team through everything. Raising Ashley, building their businesses, weathering every storm life threw at them. They'll be a team through this too. Thomas reaches over and takes her hand, squeezing gently. Together, he asks quietly. Together, she confirms. Outside, wedding music begins to play. Inside their car, two parents prepare to take back their power. Thomas reaches for his cell phone, his hand steady now. No more shaking, no more hesitation. He's made his decision, and Linda is right there with him. She organizes the papers beside them, making sure everything is easily accessible. They work in perfect synchronization, the way they always have. Years of running a household together, of making difficult decisions together, have prepared them for this moment. Thomas holds his phone, thumb hovering over the screen. Once he makes this call, there's no going back. But after what Ashley just did to them, after the public humiliation and the casual cruelty, there shouldn't be any going back. She made her choice. Now they're making theirs. Thomas stares at his phone screen, finger positioned over the first number he needs to dial. The wedding music grows louder, carrying on the breeze from the church. Their daughter is in there right now, probably walking down the aisle, probably looking radiant and happy, probably not thinking about the two people she destroyed just minutes earlier. Linda places her hand on his arm, not to stop him, but to remind him he's not alone in this. They're making this decision together, just like they've made every important decision for nearly 3 decades. The phone feels heavy in his hand, weighted with the magnitude of what he's about to do. But Ashley forced this choice. She drew the line. She said they weren't family anymore. The phone begins to ring, not from Thomas calling out, but ringing in his hand. Someone is calling them. Linda and Thomas freeze, staring at the screen. The caller ID makes their blood run cold. It's someone from the wedding, someone who needs something from them urgently. The phone keeps ringing, insistent and demanding. Thomas looks at Linda, eyebrows raised. Answer it or let go to voicemail. The decision they were about to make suddenly feels even more urgent. Whatever this call is about, it's going to change everything. The phone continues its relentless ringing as Ashley's wedding ceremony plays out in the background. Time to find out what their daughter really needs from the parents she just banished. Inside the reception hall, Ashley moves frantically between the beautifully decorated tables, her wedding dress rustling with each hurried step. The crystal centerpieces catch the light, creating rainbows across the white linens, but she's not admiring the beauty. Something is wrong, very wrong. Derek follows close behind, his usually perfect composure cracking slightly. Ashley, slow down, he says, trying to maintain his calm demeanor. Everything is going to be fine. But Ashley isn't listening. She's searching for something or someone. The guests are starting to notice her agitation, whispering among themselves as they watch the bride's increasingly frantic behavior. The reception should be starting soon, but instead of celebrating, Ashley looks terrified. The wedding guests mill around the reception area, confusion evident on their faces. The ceremony went off without a hitch, but now something feels off. Ashley stands near the head table, checking her phone obsessively, her fingers flying across the screen. Text after text, call after call, but no responses. Her panic is becoming visible to everyone in the room. The beautiful wedding setup, the flowers, the cake, the perfectly arranged tables, suddenly feels hollow and meaningless. Elderly relatives whisper to each other, wondering why the bride looks so distressed. Young cousins point and ask their parents what's happening. Derek's family exchanges worried glances, their earlier confidence beginning to waver. This isn't how a wedding reception is supposed to start. Derek paces near the floor-to-ceiling windows, his phone pressed to his ear, speaking in urgent, hushed tones. His usual arrogance has been replaced by something Ashley has never seen before: genuine worry. She watches him from across the room, her own anxiety growing with each passing minute. The wedding guests have taken their seats at the beautifully decorated tables, but the formal reception hasn't begun. They're all waiting, but for what? Ashley doesn't even know anymore. She tries calling her parents again, but it goes straight to voicemail. Again, the silence from them is deafening, and for the first time since this morning, a terrible thought begins to creep into her mind. What if she made a horrible mistake? What if the consequences of her actions are bigger than she ever imagined? Near the elaborate wedding cake table, several vendors approach Derek with increasingly urgent expressions. Ashley watches from across the room as her new husband's face grows paler with each conversation. The florist gestures wildly. The caterer looks panicked, and the photographer keeps checking his watch. Whatever they're telling Derek, it's not good news. Ashley starts walking toward them, her heart pounding. She's never seen these vendors look so stressed, so desperate. During all the months of planning, they were always professional, always in control. Now, they look like their entire businesses are at stake. Derek sees her approaching and quickly tries to wave her away, but she's not stopping. She needs to know what's happening. The guests are starting to notice the vendor commotion, and murmurs are spreading throughout the reception hall. Ashley reaches the group of vendors and Derek, her voice rising above the murmur of wedding guests. What is going on? Why does everyone look like the world is ending? The wedding florist steps forward, wringing her hands. Mrs. Williams, there's been a situation with the payments. We're getting cancellation notices, and we don't understand. Cancellation notices? Ashley interrupts, her voice sharp with disbelief. Derek tries to take her arm, to lead her away from the conversation, but she plants her feet firmly. What cancellation notices? Everything was paid for months ago. The caterer clears his throat nervously. Actually, ma'am, most of the payments were scheduled for today, and they've all been stopped. Ashley stares at them in complete confusion. Stopped? By who? That doesn't make any sense. Her heart begins to race as a terrible realization starts to dawn. Ashley pulls out her phone with shaking hands, finally understanding that she needs answers. Real answers. She scrolls through her recent calls, seeing dozens of missed calls from numbers she doesn't recognize. Vendors, suppliers, the reception venue manager, all calling within the last hour. All while she was walking down the aisle, saying her vows, posing for pictures. Derek watches her face change as the reality of the situation hits her. Ashley, he says quietly, maybe we should discuss this privately, but she's already dialing. Her parents, the people who would know exactly what's happening. The people she humiliated and banished just hours ago. The phone rings once, twice, 3 times. Then it goes to voicemail. Again, her hands are trembling now as she tries to process what this means. If her parents aren't answering, if payments are being canceled, if vendors are panicking. The reception hall fills with an uncomfortable tension as Ashley frantically dials number after number. Her parents, the wedding planner, anyone who might have answers. But each call goes unanswered or straight to voicemail. Meanwhile, Derek attempts damage control with the vendors, his usual confident demeanor completely shattered. The wedding guests begin to sense that something is seriously wrong. Conversations quiet to whispers, and all eyes turn toward the bride and groom, who should be celebrating, but instead look like they're managing a crisis. Ashley's beautiful wedding dress suddenly feels heavy, suffocating. The reception that should have been the highlight of her life is turning into a nightmare, and she has no idea how to stop it. The elegant decorations, the perfect flowers, the crystal centerpieces, none of it matters if the foundation is crumbling beneath her feet. Ashley slumps into her chair at the head table, her phone clutched in her hand, and for the first time all day, she's completely still. The realization is washing over her in waves, each one more devastating than the last. Her parents, the people she threw out of their own daughter's wedding, the people who raised her, loved her, sacrificed for her. They're not answering their phones, and somehow, impossibly, the entire wedding is falling apart because of it. Derek stands nearby, no longer trying to fix anything, just watching his new wife process the magnitude of what they've done. The expensive reception setup around them, the flowers, the food, the music, the venue, suddenly feels like a house of cards, and Ashley is beginning to understand that she might have been the one to pull out the crucial bottom card. Her mind races back to this morning, to her parents' faces when she told them they weren't welcome, the hurt in their eyes, the silence as they walked away. The wedding guests are no longer pretending everything is normal. Some have left their seats and are approaching the head table with concerned expressions, asking if everything is all right. Others are gathering their purses and checking their watches, clearly uncomfortable with the growing tension. Ashley looks up at the faces surrounding her, friends, family, colleagues, all of them witnessing what should have been her perfect day dissolving into chaos. She tries to smile, to reassure them, but the words won't come. How do you explain that you might have just destroyed your own wedding by destroying your relationship with your parents? How do you tell 200 guests that the celebration they came to witness might not actually exist? The questions in their eyes mirror the questions racing through her own mind. What has she done? And more importantly, is there any way to fix it? The reception venue, which just an hour ago buzzed with excitement and celebration, now feels hollow and tense. Some guests are quietly beginning to leave, unsure of what else to do in the face of the obvious crisis. Vendors are starting to pack their equipment, their contracts apparently void. Ashley and Derek sit at the head table, surrounded by the remnants of what was supposed to be their dream wedding, finally understanding that something catastrophic has happened. The beautiful flowers still smell sweet, the cake still looks perfect, the music still plays softly in the background, but none of it feels real anymore. Ashley stares at her phone one more time, thumb hovering over her parents' number. She has to try again. She has to find out what's happening and why her perfect wedding day has turned into her worst nightmare. But deep down, in a place she doesn't want to acknowledge, she's beginning to suspect she already knows the answer. 3 years ago, the Harper house was filled with laughter and warmth. Ashley, then 23 and fresh out of college, would spend her Sunday afternoons curled up on the living room couch with a book while Linda brought her steaming mugs of hot chocolate topped with whipped cream. "Mom, you're going to make me fat," Ashley would protest with a grin, but she never refused the treat. Thomas would be in his workshop in the garage, the sound of his tools creating a comforting background rhythm to their quiet family time. These were the moments that made all their hard work worthwhile. The simple, peaceful Sunday afternoons when they were just a family who genuinely enjoyed each other's company. Ashley felt safe here, loved here, completely accepted for exactly who she was. Saturday morning breakfasts were sacred in the Harper household. Thomas would sit at the kitchen table reading the newspaper aloud, sharing interesting articles and making commentary that would spark lively family discussions. Linda stood at the stove making her famous blueberry pancakes from scratch, the kitchen filling with the warm scent of vanilla and cinnamon. Ashley would set the table, arranging the mismatched plates and worn silverware with care, because it wasn't about perfection, it was about being together. They would talk about everything and nothing. Ashley's job at the elementary school, Thomas's latest construction project, Linda's accounting clients, neighborhood gossip, weekend plans. These conversations flowed naturally, comfortably, like a well-rehearsed dance of people who truly knew and loved each other. Ashley treasured these mornings, never imagining they would become precious memories. The Harper family barbecues were legendary in their neighborhood. Every 4th of July, Labor Day, and random summer weekend, their backyard would fill with friends, neighbors, and extended family. Thomas manned the grill with pride, flipping burgers and hot dogs while regaling anyone who would listen with stories from his construction sites. Linda orchestrated the side dishes and made sure everyone had enough to eat, constantly refilling plates and insisting people take leftovers home. Ashley would float between groups, introducing her friends to her parents with obvious pride and affection. "These are my amazing parents," she would say, her arm around Linda's shoulders or her hand on Thomas's arm. The love between them was visible, tangible, something everyone in their social circle admired and envied. Ashley felt lucky to have parents who embarrassed her with their affection rather than their absence. When Ashley moved into her own apartment after college, the transition was handled with typical Harper family teamwork and humor. They spent a weekend converting her childhood bedroom into a home office for Linda's growing accounting business. But instead of being sad about the change, they turned it into a celebration. Ashley helped her parents move furniture, laughing as they struggled to navigate her old double bed through the narrow doorway. "Remember when you insisted on pink walls?" Linda teased, and Ashley groaned dramatically. "Please don't remind me of my princess phase." Thomas chuckled from behind a bookshelf. "Your princess phase? Sweetie, you're still in your princess phase." They worked together effortlessly, each anticipating what the others needed, communicating in the shorthand of people who had lived together for over 2 decades. Even as Ashley established her independence, she remained deeply connected to her parents. Their weekly family dinners at Romano's Italian restaurant became a cherished tradition when Ashley moved out. Every Thursday at 6:30, they would meet at the same corner booth, and Ashley would update her parents on her life while they shared stories from their week. Linda would always order the chicken parmesan. Thomas stuck with his meat lover's pizza, and Ashley rotated through the menu, always asking for recommendations. "How are things with Jake?" Linda would ask about Ashley's boyfriend of the month, and Ashley would roll her eyes but answer honestly. Thomas would share updates from his construction crew, and Linda would complain good-naturedly about difficult clients. These dinners weren't obligations. They were highlights of everyone's week. Ashley looked forward to them, often calling to confirm plans days in advance. Her parents were her sounding board, her cheerleaders, her safe harbor in a sometimes chaotic world. When Ashley bought her first apartment, her parents were more excited than she was. They arrived with a truck full of housewarming gifts. Linda had made curtains for every window. Thomas brought a toolbox and spent the day installing shelves and fixing loose cabinet doors. Ashley gave them the grand tour of her modest one-bedroom place, pointing out every feature with pride. "And this is where I'll put the dining table when I can afford one," she said, gesturing to an empty corner. "Honey, you don't need to wait," Linda protested. "We can help." But Ashley shook her head firmly. "Mom, I need to do this myself." "But thank you." Thomas beamed with pride. "That's our independent girl." They understood her need for autonomy, while making it clear that their support was always available. The balance felt perfect. Ashley's growing independence, complemented by her parents' unwavering love and availability. Even living independently, Ashley called her mother almost every day. Usually in the evening while she prepared dinner, she would dial Linda's number and they would chat about everything and nothing. "What are you making tonight?" Linda would ask, and Ashley would describe her attempts at adult cooking, often with hilarious results. "I burned the garlic again, Mom. How do you make it look so easy?" Linda would laugh and walk her through the recipe step by step, offering gentle corrections and encouragement. These phone calls were lifelines for both of them. Linda missed having Ashley in the house, and Ashley missed having her mother's wisdom and comfort immediately available. But the daily conversations bridged the gap beautifully, maintaining their close bond while respecting Ashley's need for independence. Thomas would often shout, "Hi, Princess," in the background, and Ashley would always shout back, "Hi, Daddy." The first crack in their perfect family dynamic appeared 6 months ago when Ashley introduced Derek to her parents at their usual coffee shop. She was nervous, fidgeting with her jewelry, and speaking faster than normal. "Mom, Dad, this is Derek Williams. Derek, these are my parents, Linda and Thomas Harper." Derek stood to shake hands, his smile polished and professional, but something in his eyes seemed calculating. "Mr. and Mrs. Harper, Ashley has told me so much about you." His tone was friendly enough, but there was an undertone of assessment, as if he were evaluating them rather than meeting them. Thomas sensed it immediately, but kept his concerns to himself. Linda noticed how Derek's eyes swept over their casual clothing and modest appearance, filing away information. Ashley, caught up in the excitement of the introduction, missed the subtle tension entirely. She just wanted the two most important parts of her life to blend seamlessly. The conversation that followed was polite but strained. Derek dominated the discussion, talking extensively about his law career, his family's prominence in the community, and his ambitious plans for the future. "Ashley and I have been discussing some significant changes," he said, glancing at her meaningfully. "We believe in setting high standards and surrounding ourselves with excellence." Thomas and Linda exchanged a subtle look, both noticing how Derek's comments seemed designed to highlight the differences between their middle-class lifestyle and his wealthy background. Ashley shifted uncomfortably in her seat, clearly sensing the tension but not understanding its source. She kept trying to steer the conversation toward common ground, but Derek seemed determined to establish his superiority. Linda and Thomas remained gracious and welcoming, asking polite questions about his work and family, but internally they were both concerned about this young man's impact on their daughter. After that first meeting, family dynamics began to shift in subtle but noticeable ways. Ashley's visits became less frequent, and when she did come over, she seemed distracted, constantly checking her phone for messages from Derek. The easy conversations became more stilted, as if Ashley were editing herself, filtering her thoughts through some new lens. During one particularly uncomfortable family dinner, she criticized things that had never bothered her before. The mismatched furniture, her father's table manners, her mother's tendency to ask personal questions. "Derek says it's important to maintain certain standards," she said when Linda asked about her sudden dietary restrictions. Thomas and Linda watched their warm, open daughter becoming someone they barely recognized, more polished, more critical, less genuinely happy. As she hugged them goodbye that evening, both parents felt like they were losing her to something they couldn't understand or fight. The foundation of their close family relationship was beginning to crack, and none of them knew how to stop it. The reception venue that looked like a fairy tale just hours ago now feels like a battlefield. Ashley sits at the head table, her beautiful wedding dress spread around her like a white cloud, but her face shows nothing but confusion and growing panic. Vendors approach her table in waves, each carrying clipboards, contracts, and increasingly urgent expressions. The wedding coordinator, who had been so calm and professional during months of planning, now looks frazzled and desperate. "Mrs. Williams, we need to discuss the payment situation immediately," she says, her voice strained with barely contained panic. Ashley stares at her blankly. What payment situation? Everything was handled months ago. But even as she says the words, she can see from the coordinator's expression that something is terribly, catastrophically wrong. The beautiful crystal chandeliers above seem to mock her with their elegance, while her world crumbles beneath the surface. Near the elaborate floral arrangements that cost thousands of dollars, the head caterer corners Derek with an expression Ashley has never seen before: genuine fear. She approaches slowly, her heart pounding as she catches fragments of their hushed conversation. "Payment authorization was revoked. Contracts are void. Need immediate resolution." Derek's face grows paler with each word, and when he sees Ashley approaching, he tries to wave her away. But she's not backing down this time. "Derek, what is happening? Why does everyone look like they're about to have nervous breakdowns?" The caterer turns to her with relief. "Mrs. Williams, perhaps you can help us understand. We received cancellation notices for all payments scheduled for today, and we can't reach the primary account holders. Ashley's stomach drops. Primary account holders. She knows exactly who that means, and the realization hits her like a physical blow. The wedding guests, seated at their elegantly decorated tables with pristine white linens and crystal glasses, have stopped pretending everything is normal. Whispers spread from table to table like wildfire, and Ashley can feel the weight of 200 pairs of eyes watching her every move. Her great-aunt Margaret leans over to her companion. "Something's not right, dear." The bride looks absolutely terrified. Her college friends exchange worried glances, unsure whether to approach or give her space. Derek's family sits stiffly at their assigned table, their earlier smugness replaced by obvious discomfort. The beautiful wedding setup, the centerpieces, the place cards, the carefully planned seating arrangement, suddenly feels like a stage set for a play that's gone completely off script. Ashley stands in the center of it all, feeling utterly lost and completely exposed. This was supposed to be the happiest day of her life, but instead she feels like she's drowning in front of everyone she cares about. Ashley moves to the bar area, frantically dialing number after number on her phone. Her parents' number goes straight to voicemail again. The wedding planner isn't answering. Even the venue manager seems to have disappeared. Meanwhile, Derek attempts damage control with the vendors, but his usual confident charm has completely evaporated. She watches him promise solutions he clearly doesn't have, making commitments with money he apparently doesn't possess. The bartender, who should be serving champagne toasts, instead stands awkwardly polishing glasses while chaos erupts around him. The beautiful floral arrangements seem to mock them with their perfection. Thousands of dollars worth of roses and lilies that someone needs to pay for, but apparently no one can. Ashley's hands shake as she dials her parents' number for the 10th time, finally beginning to understand that this disaster might be connected to the terrible thing she did to them just hours ago. Near the reception venue entrance, Ashley notices with growing horror that some of her wedding guests are beginning to gather their purses and check their watches. The uncomfortable expressions on their faces tell her everything she needs to know. They're preparing to leave. Her cousin Jamie approaches hesitantly. "Ashley, honey, is everything okay?" Some people are asking if the reception is still happening. Ashley tries to smile, to reassure her, but the words stick in her throat. How do you explain that your wedding reception might be canceled because you destroyed your relationship with your parents? How do you tell your guests that the celebration they dressed up for, traveled for, bought gifts for, might not actually exist? The social embarrassment is almost as devastating as the financial crisis. These people came to celebrate her happiness, and instead, they're witnessing her complete humiliation. She can see the pity in their eyes, the awkward discomfort, the whispered conversations about whether they should stay or go. Ashley slumps back in her chair at the head table, her phone clutched in her hands like a lifeline to a world that no longer makes sense. The expensive wedding reception spread around them. The silk linens, the gold-rimmed china, the carefully arranged centerpieces suddenly feels like evidence of a crime she didn't know she was committing. Derek stands nearby, no longer trying to fix anything, just watching his new wife process the magnitude of their situation. "Ashley," he says quietly, "we need to talk about our options." But she's not listening anymore. She's thinking about this morning, about her parents' faces when she told them they weren't welcome, the hurt in her father's eyes, the way her mother's hand flew to cover her mouth in shock, the silence as they walked away from their own daughter's wedding. For the first time since Derek entered her life, Ashley is beginning to wonder if she's made a terrible mistake. In the background, Ashley watches with growing panic as vendors begin packing their equipment. The florist is carefully removing centerpieces from tables. The photographer is securing his camera gear. The musicians are breaking down their sound system. Her wedding is literally being dismantled around her while she sits powerless to stop it. Each vendor who leaves takes a piece of her dream day with them, until she's left staring at an increasingly empty room that bears no resemblance to the fairy tale reception she'd envisioned. The remaining guests look around uncomfortably, unsure whether to stay or follow the exodus. Ashley feels like she's watching her life collapse in real time. And the worst part is that she's beginning to suspect she caused it herself. The beautiful wedding dress that made her feel like a princess this morning now feels like a costume for a role she no longer knows how to play. Ashley finds herself staring at the gift table, covered with beautifully wrapped presents and cards from their wedding guests. Each package represents someone's love, time, and money spent to celebrate what should have been the happiest day of her life. But now these gifts feel like accusations, reminders of all the people she's letting down with this disaster. Derek approaches her with a serious expression she's never seen before. "Ashley, I need to tell you something about the wedding expenses," he begins, but she cuts him off. "Just tell me the truth, Derek. All of it. No more trying to protect me or manage the situation. I need to know exactly what's happening and why our wedding is falling apart." The moment of reckoning has arrived, and Ashley steels herself for answers she's not sure she wants to hear. But she needs to understand how her perfect day became a nightmare, and more importantly, what role her treatment of her parents played in this disaster. As Ashley looks around the reception venue, now half empty with guests quietly making their exits, a terrible realization begins to dawn on her. Every vendor who's panicking, every payment that's been canceled, every contract that's been voided, it all points back to one source: her parents. The people she publicly humiliated and banned from their own daughter's wedding were apparently the ones making this entire celebration possible. The beautiful venue, the elegant flowers, the gourmet catering, the professional photography, none of it was paid for by Derek's family despite their wealth and status. It was her middle-class parents, the ones she was ashamed of, who had been quietly financing her dream wedding. The irony is so devastating it makes her physically sick. She spent months being embarrassed by their simple lifestyle while they were working extra hours, making sacrifices, going into debt to give her everything she wanted. And how did she repay them? By throwing them out like unwanted strangers. The reception venue, which just hours ago buzzed with excitement and celebration, now stands mostly empty. Ashley and Derek sit alone at the head table, surrounded by the beautiful wedding decorations that now feel like props from a movie set after filming has ended. The silence is deafening after hours of music, laughter, and conversation. The few remaining guests hover uncertainly near the exit, clearly unsure of the proper etiquette for abandoning a wedding reception. Ashley stares at her phone one more time, thumb hovering over her parents' contact information. She knows she needs to call them, needs to apologize, needs to try to fix this disaster. But she also knows that some mistakes are too big, too public, too hurtful to simply apologize away. As the last of the vendors finish packing their equipment and the final guests slip quietly out the door, Ashley realizes that her perfect wedding day has become the worst day of her life. And the most devastating part is that she has no one to blame but herself. The reception venue has cleared out except for a few stragglers and the cleanup crew. Ashley faces Derek at the head table, her wedding dress now wrinkled and her makeup smudged from stress and tears. "Derek, I need you to tell me the truth about our wedding expenses. Right now. No more deflecting. No more I'll handle it. I need to know exactly who paid for what." Derek shifts uncomfortably in his chair, loosening his tie as if it's suddenly too tight. "Ashley, it's complicated. There are multiple funding sources." "Stop," she interrupts firmly. "Just stop at the lawyers speak. My parents. Did my parents pay for this wedding?" The question hangs in the air between them like a blade. Derek's silence is answer enough, but Ashley needs to hear him say it. She needs to understand the full scope of what she's done. The beautiful centerpieces around them suddenly feel like evidence of a crime she didn't know she was committing. Derek finally nods, his confident facade crumbling completely. "Yes, your parents covered most of the major expenses. The venue, the catering, the flowers, the photography package. My family contributed some, but..." He trails off, unable to meet her eyes. Ashley feels the blood drain from her face as the full magnitude of her betrayal becomes clear. "How much, Derek? How much did my parents spend on this wedding?" When he doesn't answer immediately, she slams her hand on the table, making the empty champagne glasses rattle. "How much?" Derek's voice is barely a whisper when he finally responds. Around $85,000. The number hits Ashley like a physical blow. $85,000. From her middle-class parents who live in a modest house and drive 10-year-old cars. From the people she was embarrassed by. From the people she banned from their own daughter's wedding. Ashley stands up abruptly from the table, her chair scraping against the floor with a harsh sound that echoes in a nearly empty venue. She begins pacing back and forth, her wedding dress swishing around her legs as she processes this devastating revelation. $85,000, she repeats, her voice rising with each word. My parents, who you constantly criticize for being too middle class, spent $85,000 on our wedding. And you knew this. You knew this the entire time. Derek watches her pace, his face a mixture of guilt and defensiveness. Ashley, please calm down. People can hear you. But she's beyond caring about appearances now. The cleanup staff working around them pause in their duties, sensing the tension, but trying to remain invisible. Ashley's mind races through all the months of planning, all the times Derek made subtle comments about her parents' limitations, all the times she felt ashamed of their simple lifestyle. And they were secretly paying for everything. Ashley moves to the floor-to-ceiling windows and stares out at the parking lot, now nearly empty except for a few remaining cars. Somewhere out there, her parents are dealing with the aftermath of what she did to them. Somewhere out there, the people who spent their life savings on her happiness are probably crying, probably wondering where they went wrong as parents. Derek approaches her cautiously, as if she might shatter at any moment. Ashley, I know this is a shock, but we can work through this. My family can help cover some of the costs if needed. She turns to look at him, and he takes a step back at the fury in her eyes. Your family? The family that spent months looking down on my parents? The family that made subtle comments about our different backgrounds? That family is suddenly willing to help. Derek's silence confirms what she already suspected. His wealthy family never intended to pay for anything substantial. They were content to let her working-class parents foot the bill while taking credit for the elegance. Ashley kneels down and begins picking up rose petals that have fallen from the centerpieces, her wedding dress pooling around her on the floor. It's a symbolic moment. Her perfect day literally falling apart, and she's trying to gather the pieces with her bare hands. Each petal she picks up represents money her parents spent, love they showed, sacrifices they made. Derek stands nearby, looking helpless and increasingly uncomfortable. Ashley, what are you doing? The cleaning crew will handle that. She looks up at him from the floor, tears streaming down her face. Do you have any idea what $85,000 means to my family, Derek? Do you know what they probably had to sacrifice to give us this wedding? She gestures around the venue, at the remnants of their celebration. My father probably worked double shifts for months. My mother probably denied herself everything she wanted, and I repaid them by telling them they weren't welcome at their own daughter's wedding. Ashley pulls out her phone with shaking hands, scrolling through her missed calls. Dozens of numbers she doesn't recognize, vendors, suppliers, people desperate for payment confirmations. But no calls from her parents. No messages. Just silence from the two people whose hearts she shattered this morning. Derek tries to reach for her phone. Ashley, maybe you should wait until you've calmed down before. She jerks away from him. Calm down? Calm down? Derek, I just discovered that I publicly humiliated the two people who spent their life savings on my wedding. I told my parents they weren't welcome at an event they paid for. I need to call them right now. She dials their number with trembling fingers, praying they'll answer, praying she hasn't destroyed the most important relationships in her life over pride and manipulation. The phone rings once, twice, 3 times. Then voicemail. Again. Ashley moves to the gift table, still clutching her phone, and stares at the wedding presents while listening to her parents' voicemail message one more time. Hi, you've reached Linda and Thomas Harper. We can't come to the phone right now, but please leave a message and we'll get back to you. The normalcy of their voices, the warmth in their tone, makes her sob harder. These are the people who raised her, loved her unconditionally, supported every dream she ever had. And she threw them away for what? For Derek's approval? For his family's acceptance? Derek approaches her again, but she holds up her hand to stop him. Did you know they were going to pay for everything when you started criticizing them? When you made those comments about their house, their car, their simple lifestyle? Derek's guilty silence is answer enough. He knew. He knew her parents were financing their dream wedding while he systematically turned her against them. Ashley tries calling every number she can think of. Her parents' home phone, their cell phones, even her father's work number. Nothing. Every call goes to voicemail or rings endlessly. The panic in her chest grows with each unanswered call. Where are they? What are they doing? Are they okay? Derek watches her frantic calling with growing alarm, finally beginning to understand the magnitude of what they've done. Ashley, I'm sure they're just processing what happened. They'll answer eventually. She whirls on him, her eyes blazing. Processing? Derek, we took their money, planned a wedding with their sacrifices, and then I told them they weren't good enough to attend. They're not processing. They're probably destroyed. My father has never missed one of my calls in 26 years, and now he won't answer his phone. The reality of what she's lost, not just the money, but the relationships, is finally hitting her with full force. Ashley collapses back in her chair at the head table, phone pressed to her ear as she tries her parents' number one more time. The reception venue around them is nearly empty now, with only a few cleanup crew members working quietly in the background. The beautiful wedding that started this morning with such promise has devolved into a nightmare of betrayal, financial crisis, and family destruction. Derek stands nearby, his hands hanging uselessly at his sides, finally understanding that his manipulation and social climbing have cost them everything. Ashley's voice is broken when she finally speaks. They won't answer, Derek. My parents won't answer their phone. She looks at him with a mixture of fury and despair. Do you understand what we've done? Do you understand what I've done? I've lost my family. The two people who love me most in this world, who sacrificed everything to make me happy, and I threw them away like garbage. As the last few people leave the reception venue, Ashley sits alone at the head table, staring at her phone screen showing her parents' contact information. The silence is deafening after hours of celebration that turned into crisis. Derek hovers in the background, but she barely acknowledges his presence anymore. The weight of her betrayal settles over her like a suffocating blanket. Her parents probably went home to their modest house, the house she was embarrassed by, and cried over what their daughter had become. They probably sat at their worn kitchen table, the one where they'd shared thousands of family meals, and wondered how they'd failed as parents. The thought makes her physically sick. She has to find a way to reach them, to apologize, to try to repair the damage she's done. But first, she needs to understand exactly how deep Derek's manipulation goes and how long she's been blind to the people who truly loved her. The beautiful wedding dress she's wearing suddenly feels like a costume for a role she never should have played. Ashley drives through her parents' neighborhood, still wearing her wedding dress, the fabric bunched up around the driver's seat in an uncomfortable mess. She's made this drive thousands of times over the years, but never under circumstances like these. Never after destroying the people who live at the end of this familiar route. The suburban streets look the same as always. Modest homes with well-maintained yards, children playing on sidewalks, neighbors chatting over fences, but everything feels different now. These are the people and places Derek taught her to look down on, the middle-class mediocrity he said they needed to rise above. But these are also the people who raised her with love, who celebrated her achievements, who welcomed Derek into their family despite their reservations. As she turns on her parents' street, her heart pounds with dread and desperate hope. She needs to see them, to apologize, to try to fix what she's broken. The Harper family home looks smaller than Ashley remembers, more humble than it seemed when she was growing up here. The modest two-story house with its small front yard and aging siding suddenly appears precious to her in a way it never has before. This is where her parents worked so hard to provide for her, where they saved every penny they could to give her opportunities they never had. The driveway is empty. Both her parents' cars are gone, and the house is a closed-up, abandoned feeling that makes her stomach clench with anxiety. She walks up the familiar driveway in her elaborate wedding dress, the beautiful fabric dragging slightly on the concrete. The contrast is surreal. A bride in thousands of dollars worth of silk and lace approaching a house that represents everything simple and genuine she's been taught to reject. She rings the doorbell and waits, praying for the sound of footsteps, for her father's voice calling, "Just a minute." But there's only silence. Ashley presses the doorbell again and again, the familiar chime echoing emptily inside the house. When that doesn't work, she knocks on the door with increasing urgency, her knuckles growing sore against the wood. "Mom? Dad? Please, I know you're probably angry, but I need to talk to you." She peers through the front windows, cupping her hands against the glass to see inside. The living room looks normal. Her mother's reading glasses on the side table, her father's work boots by the door, but there's no sign of life. No lights on, no movement, no indication that anyone is home. The neighbors across the street are watching her now, probably wondering why a bride in a wedding dress is desperately trying to break into the Harper house. Mrs. Peterson, who's lived across the street for 15 years, waves tentatively, but Ashley is too focused on her mission to wave back. Where could her parents be? They never go anywhere on Saturday evenings. Ashley walks around to the side of the house, her wedding dress catching on bushes and gathering dirt along the hem. She doesn't care about the expensive fabric anymore. She only cares about finding her parents. She peers through the kitchen window, where she can see the familiar sight of her mother's coffee mug in the sink and her father's newspaper folded on the counter. Everything looks normal, frozen in time from this morning when they left for what they thought would be their daughter's wedding. The back door is locked, just like the front. She tries calling their cell phones again while standing in their backyard, the place where they held countless family barbecues and where her father taught her to ride a bike. The calls go straight to voicemail again, and Ashley realizes with growing horror that her parents might have turned off their phones completely. They might not want to be found, especially not by her. Ashley sits on the back porch steps where she spent countless hours as a child, her wedding dress spread around her like a deflated balloon. The wooden steps are weathered and familiar, painted the same blue they've been for 10 years because her parents couldn't afford to update them more frequently. She calls every number she can think of, her Aunt Sarah, her Uncle Mike, family friends, even her parents' neighbors whose number she still has at her phone. "Hi, Mrs. Johnson, it's Ashley. Have you seen my parents today?" "No." "Okay, if you hear from them, please ask them to call me. It's important." Each call yields the same result. No one has seen Linda and Thomas Harper since this morning. They've essentially disappeared, and Ashley is beginning to understand that this might be intentional. They don't want to be found, at least not by her. The sun is beginning to set, casting long shadows across the backyard where she played as a child, and Ashley has never felt more alone in her life. Mrs. Peterson, the elderly neighbor from across the street, finally approaches Ashley as she sits defeated on the porch. "Honey, are you all right? You look like you've been through something terrible." Ashley looks up at the kind woman who used to give her homemade cookies when she was little, who always asked about her grades and her job in her life. "Mrs. Peterson, have you seen my parents today?" After this morning?" The older woman's expression grows sympathetic and slightly uncomfortable. "Oh, sweetheart, I saw them leave around noon, right after they came back from, well, I assume from your wedding. They looked." She pauses, choosing her words carefully. "They looked very upset, dear. Your mother was crying. They packed a suitcase into the car and drove away. I haven't seen them since." The news hits Ashley like a physical blow. They left. They actually left town rather than stay in the same place as her. As darkness begins to fall and street lights flicker on throughout the neighborhood, Ashley stands alone in her parents' driveway, still wearing her wedding dress. The house behind her remains dark and empty, a symbol of everything she's lost through her own actions. Neighbors are turning on their porch lights and settling in for quiet Saturday evenings with their families. But Ashley has no family to go home to anymore. Derek has been calling her phone repeatedly, but she's been ignoring him. She can't face him right now, can't pretend that their marriage has any hope of success when it's built on the destruction of her relationship with her parents. The wedding dress that made her feel like a princess this morning now feels like a heavy burden, a reminder of the fantasy she chose over reality. She's been standing here for over an hour, hoping against hope that her parents' car will turn into the driveway. But deep down, she knows they're not coming back tonight. Ashley finally retreats to her car, parked outside her childhood home, and scrolls through photos on her phone. Pictures of family vacations, birthday celebrations, graduation days, all featuring her parents' proud, loving faces. In every photo, they're beaming with pride at their daughter's accomplishments, never asking for recognition or credit, just happy to see her succeed. She stops on a photo from last Christmas, taken in the living room she was just peering into through the window. Her father has his arm around her shoulders, her mother is laughing at something off camera, and Ashley looks genuinely happy in a way she hasn't felt in months. This was before Derek's influence fully took hold, when she still appreciated her parents for who they were rather than being ashamed of what they weren't. The contrast between that happy family photo and her current situation, alone in a wedding dress, crying outside their empty house, is devastating. While searching her car for tissues, Ashley finds an old envelope in her glove compartment with her mother's familiar handwriting. It's addressed to her, and inside she finds a card she'd forgotten about, something her mother gave her months ago during wedding planning. The card features a simple message: "To our beautiful daughter on her wedding day. We are so proud of the woman you've become and so grateful to be part of your special day. Love always, Mom and Dad." There's also a handwritten note: "Ashley, no matter what happens in life, remember that your father and I will always love you unconditionally. You are our greatest joy and our proudest achievement. We can't wait to see you walk down the aisle and start this new chapter. Love, Mom." The card is dated from 3 months ago, when they were all excited about the wedding planning. Reading it now, knowing what she's done to them, Ashley sobs harder than she has all day. Ashley sits in her car outside her parents' dark house, still clutching her mother's card, and makes a decision. She can't undo what happened this morning, can't take back the words that destroyed her family, but she can try to find them and make it right. She doesn't know where they went or when they'll come back, but she's going to wait. She's going to camp out here every day if necessary, call every hotel in a 50-mile radius, contact every relative and family friend until she tracks them down. Derek's been calling nonstop, probably wondering where his wife disappeared to, but Ashley doesn't care about Derek anymore. She cares about the 2 people who loved her enough to spend their life savings on her happiness, only to be repaid with public humiliation and rejection. The wedding dress feels heavy and ridiculous now, a symbol of misplaced priorities and broken relationships. But Ashley isn't giving up. She's going to find her parents, and she's going to spend the rest of her life trying to earn their forgiveness for the worst mistake she's ever made. Back at her apartment near midnight, Ashley sits on her living room floor still wearing her wrinkled, dirty wedding dress, surrounded by boxes of old cards, letters, and mementos from her parents. She's searching for evidence, for proof of the love she now realizes she threw away. Every birthday card, every graduation note, every random "thinking of you" message tells the same story: parents who adored their daughter unconditionally. As she reads through years of loving messages, a pattern emerges that makes her stomach turn. The timing of when she started pulling away from her parents coincides exactly with when Derek entered her life. Before Derek, she called her parents daily, visited weekly, included them in every major decision. After Derek, she began finding fault with everything they did, said, and represented. The transformation wasn't gradual, it was systematic. And now, reading these old letters with clear eyes, Ashley begins to understand that her change of heart wasn't natural evolution. It was manipulation. Ashley scrolls through old text messages on her phone, searching for the beginning of Derek's influence over her. She finds conversations from 8 months ago, early in their relationship, when his comments about her parents seemed like casual observations rather than calculated attacks. "Your parents are sweet, but don't you think you're capable of more than their middle-class expectations? I love how close you are to your family, but successful people need to set boundaries with limitations. Your parents' advice is nice, but they've never operated at our level." Reading these messages now, with the clarity that comes from devastating hindsight, Ashley sees the pattern clearly. Derek never directly criticized her parents. Instead, He planted seeds of doubt about their worthiness to guide her life. He made her feel like loyalty to her parents was holding her back from reaching her potential. Each message was carefully crafted to make her question relationships that had been sources of strength and love for 26 years. In her bedroom, Ashley looks through her closet and sees the physical evidence of her transformation. On one side hang the clothes her parents bought her over the years. Practical, comfortable pieces chosen with love and careful attention to her budget and lifestyle. On the other side are the expensive designer outfits Derek encouraged her to buy, clothes that made her feel sophisticated but also constantly worried about money. She remembers the day Derek convinced her to spend $300 on a single dress for one of his family events. "You need to look the part if you want to fit in with successful people," he'd said. Her parents never criticized her appearance, never made her feel like she needed to change to be worthy of love. But Derek systematically convinced her that everything about her old life, including the people who raised her, was inadequate. The woman staring back at her from the mirror, still in her elaborate wedding dress, looks like a stranger, someone playing a role rather than being herself. In her kitchen, Ashley finds the notebook where she kept wedding planning details. Flipping through the pages, she discovers something that makes her blood run cold. Derek's handwriting mixed with hers. Notes about vendors, costs, and payment schedules, all in Derek's neat script. Harper payment confirmed, venue deposit. Linda handling catering final payment, Thomas covering photography package. Derek knew from the very beginning that her parents were financing their wedding. He participated in the planning process, helped coordinate with vendors, and watched her parents sacrifice their financial security for their daughter's happiness, all while gradually poisoning Ashley against them, all while making her ashamed of their modest lifestyle and limited sophistication. The notebook is evidence of a systematic betrayal that goes far deeper than Ashley initially realized. Derek didn't just allow her parents to pay for everything while criticizing them. He actively participated in the deception. Ashley dials Derek's number with shaking hands, her fury building with each ring. When he answers, his voice is cautious. "Ashley, where are you? I've been calling for hours." She doesn't bother with pleasantries. "Derek, I found the wedding planning notebook. Your handwriting is all over the payment schedules. You knew my parents were paying for everything from day one." There's a long pause before Derek responds. "Ashley, you're upset. Maybe we should talk about this when you've had time to process." "Process?" she interrupts. "Derek, I need you to explain to me why you spent months making me ashamed of my parents while secretly depending on their money to fund our wedding." Another pause. "It's complicated, Ashley. There were multiple financial considerations." "Stop lying to me," she screams into the phone. "Just for once in our relationship, tell me the truth. Did you deliberately turn me against my parents while they were paying for our wedding?" The silence that follows tells her everything she needs to know. Derek's voice becomes defensive, and for the first time in their relationship, Ashley hears his mask slip completely. "Ashley, you have to understand the pressure I was under from my family. They expected a certain type of wedding, a certain level of sophistication. Your parents were willing to provide that, but they didn't understand the social requirements." Ashley's jaw drops. "Social requirements? Derek, are you telling me that you used my parents' money to impress your family while simultaneously convincing me they weren't good enough to attend?" Derek's response is the final nail in the coffin of their marriage. "My parents thought it would be better if your parents took a smaller role in the actual ceremony. They were concerned about compatibility issues, but we still appreciated their financial contribution." The callousness of his words, the casual way he dismisses her parents as useful for money but not worthy of respect, makes Ashley physically sick. She realizes she's been married to a stranger, someone who could orchestrate this level of betrayal with such calculated coldness. Ashley stares at herself in the bathroom mirror while Derek continues making excuses over the phone, and she barely recognizes the woman looking back at her. The elaborate wedding makeup is smeared from crying. The expensive dress is wrinkled and stained. But more than that, she sees someone who lost herself completely. "Derek," she interrupts his rambling justification. "Did your family plan this from the beginning? The financial arrangement, the exclusion of my parents, all of it. His hesitation confirms her worst fears. My mother thought it would be cleaner if we handled the social aspects while your parents handled the financial aspects. It seemed like a reasonable division of responsibilities. Ashley laughs bitterly. Responsibilities? Derek, you turn me into someone who would publicly humiliate the people who raised me, who would be ashamed of the people who sacrificed everything for my happiness. And you did it so deliberately that I thought it was my own idea. The manipulation was so complete, so systematic, that she genuinely believed her changing feelings about her parents were natural growth rather than calculated poisoning. Ashley ends the phone call with Derek abruptly, unable to listen to another word of his justifications. She begins struggling out of the wedding dress, desperate to remove every symbol of the mistake she's made. The elaborate gown that made her feel like a princess this morning now feels like a costume from a play she never should have agreed to perform in. As she peels away the layers of silk and lace, she feels like she's shedding someone else's skin, returning to herself after months of being someone Derek molded her into. The dress pools on the floor around her feet, thousands of dollars worth of fabric that represents the destruction of her most important relationships. She kicks it aside with disgust and relief. That woman, the one who could be convinced to betray her own parents, is not who Ashley really is. She was manipulated into becoming someone unrecognizable, someone who could prioritize status over love, appearance over substance, Derek's approval over her parents' hearts. Now dressed in comfortable clothes for the first time in months, jeans and a t-shirt her parents gave her for Christmas, Ashley begins gathering evidence of the full extent of her parents' financial sacrifice. Bank statements, credit card bills, vendor receipts. She needs to understand exactly how much they spent and how they managed it. What she discovers makes her cry all over again. Her father took a second mortgage on their house. Her mother liquidated her retirement account. They borrowed against everything they owned to fund a wedding for a daughter, who then told them they weren't good enough to attend. The financial documentation tells a story of parents who would have done anything to make their child happy, even if it meant risking their own financial security. Meanwhile, Derek's wealthy family contributed minimal amounts while taking maximum credit for the elegant affair. The disparity is so stark, so morally disgusting, that Ashley wonders how she could have been blind to it for so long. At 3 a.m, Ashley sits at her laptop and begins the difficult process of trying to make amends. She writes emails to every vendor, explaining the situation and taking responsibility for the payment confusion. She researches divorce lawyers, understanding that her marriage to Derek is over before it really began. Most importantly, she drafts a letter to her parents, not an email or text, but a real letter that she'll hand-deliver when she finds them. The letter fills pages as she tries to articulate her understanding of what she's done, her recognition of how she was manipulated, and her desperate hope for forgiveness. She knows that saying, "I'm sorry," isn't enough, that some damage can't be easily repaired. But she also knows that her parents raised her to take responsibility for her mistakes and to fight for the relationships that matter most. As the sun begins to rise on what should have been the first day of her marriage, Ashley commits herself to spending however long it takes to earn back the love and trust she threw away. The wedding is over, but the real work of her life is just beginning. Ashley finds Derek having breakfast with his mother Patricia at the upscale Grandview Hotel restaurant the morning after their wedding disaster. She's dressed simply in jeans and a sweater, a stark contrast to the elegant dining room and Patricia's designer outfit. Derek looks surprised to see her, while Patricia's expression is one of barely concealed disdain. "Ashley, darling," Patricia says with false sweetness, "you look different today." Ashley takes a deep breath, steeling herself for the confrontation she should have had months ago. "I need to talk to both of you about what happened yesterday, about what you've been doing to my family." Derek shifts uncomfortably in his chair. "Ashley, perhaps we should discuss this privately." "No," she says firmly, pulling out the chair across from them. "Your mother was part of this from the beginning. She deserves to hear what I have to say." Patricia raises an eyebrow, her fork paused halfway to her mouth. "I'm not sure what you mean, dear." Ashley pulls out the wedding planning notebook and places it on the white tablecloth between them. I found this last night. Derek's handwriting all over the payment schedules. Evidence that you both knew my parents were financing our entire wedding while you systematically turned me against them. She flips through the pages, pointing to specific entries. Here, Derek coordinating with my father about the venue deposit. Here, notes about my mother handling catering payments. You weren't just passively allowing them to pay while criticizing them. You were actively managing their contributions while poisoning me against them. Patricia's composure begins to crack slightly. Ashley, I think you're misunderstanding the situation. Your parents offered to help with expenses. Offered. Ashley's voice rises, causing other diners to glance over. They didn't offer anything. You orchestrated a situation where they felt obligated to pay for everything while convincing me they weren't sophisticated enough to be properly involved. Patricia sets down her fork with deliberate precision, her mask of politeness finally slipping. Ashley, let's be honest about what your parents could and couldn't contribute to this marriage. They're lovely people, but they simply don't move in our social circles. We thought it would be easier for everyone if they handled the financial aspects while we managed the social requirements. Ashley stares at her in disbelief. Social requirements? Patricia, these are the people who raised me, who loved me unconditionally for 26 years. They weren't employees hired to fund your social event. Derek reaches across the table. Ashley, please lower your voice. People are staring. She jerks her hand away from his. Let them stare, Derek. I want to understand how you convinced me that my parents, people who worked double shifts to pay for our wedding, weren't good enough to attend it. The other restaurant patrons are indeed watching now, drawn by the intensity of the confrontation unfolding at the corner table. Patricia's veneer of sophistication completely disappears as she leans forward with cold eyes. Fine, Ashley, you want the truth? Your parents don't belong in our world. They're nice enough people, but they would have been embarrassing in an event of that caliber. We needed their money, not their presence. The brutal honesty of her words hits Ashley like a physical blow. You needed their money, but not their presence? Patricia, you're talking about my parents. The people who sacrificed their retirement savings so I could have a beautiful wedding. Patricia shrugs elegantly. And they got what they wanted. Their daughter married into a prominent family. We all benefited from the arrangement. Ashley feels physically sick. You actually planned this. You identified my parents as useful for money, but disposable as people. And then you systematically convinced me to agree with you. Derek finally speaks up. Ashley, it wasn't that calculated. Shut up, Derek. Both women say simultaneously, though for very different reasons. Ashley's voice is deadly quiet now. How long have you been planning this? How long have you been working to separate me from my parents? Patricia and Derek exchange a look that tells Ashley everything she needs to know. From the beginning, Patricia admits with a slight smile. Derek told me about your family background early in your relationship. We realized that while your parents couldn't contribute socially, they might be willing to contribute financially if properly motivated. It just required some adjustments to your perspective about their role in your life. Ashley feels like she's been hit by a truck. Adjustments to my perspective? You mean systematic psychological manipulation designed to make me ashamed of the people who raised me? Derek finally finds his voice. Ashley, we never intended for you to cut them off completely. We just thought it would be better if they took a background role in their own daughter's wedding that they paid for. Ashley's voice is rising again. Derek, do you hear yourself? Through her anger, Ashley suddenly grasps the full scope of what she's lost. Derek, did you ever respect my parents? Even once. Even when they were writing checks for our wedding. Derek's hesitation is answer enough, but he makes it worse by actually responding. Ashley, respect isn't just about good intentions. Your parents are limited. They did their best with what they had, but they couldn't offer you the opportunities my family can provide. The casual cruelty of his words breaks something inside Ashley. Limited? Derek, my father built his own business from nothing. My mother put herself through college while working full-time. They raised a daughter who was confident, educated, and happy until you decided I needed to be someone else. She stands up from the table, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. They weren't limited, Derek. They were real. They loved me for who I was, not for who they wanted to mold me into. Patricia's smile is ice cold. And look how that turned out, dear. Ashley looks between Derek and Patricia, seeing them clearly for the first time in months. You destroyed my relationship with my parents for what? So you could have an elegant wedding without having to pay for it? So you could feel superior to people who are better human beings than you'll ever be. Derek stands up, trying to regain control of the situation. Ashley, you're being dramatic. We can work through this. My family is willing to help repair the situation with your parents. Ashley laughs bitterly. Repair the situation? Derek, I told my parents they weren't welcome at their own daughter's wedding. I publicly humiliated the two people who love me most in the world because you convinced me they were beneath me. There is no repairing that. Other restaurant patrons are openly staring now, some recording with their phones. This marriage is over, Derek. It was over the moment I chose your manipulation over their love. Derek's face flushes with anger and embarrassment as he realizes he's losing everything in front of an audience. Ashley addresses Derek and Patricia with a clarity she hasn't felt in months. I want you both to understand something. My parents spent their life savings on our wedding because they thought it would make me happy. You spent months convincing me to be ashamed of that love. But I'm not ashamed anymore. I'm proud to be their daughter, and I'm disgusted that I let you convince me otherwise. She pulls off her wedding ring and places it on the table between them. This marriage was built on the financial sacrifice of people you taught me to despise. It's not a marriage, it's a theft. Derek reaches for the ring desperately. Ashley, please. We can fix this. I love you. She shakes her head sadly. Derek, you love the version of me that you created. The one who would abandon her family for your approval. But that's not who I really am, and I refuse to be her anymore. Patricia's voice is venomous. You're making a mistake, Ashley. You're choosing people who will hold you back over people who can elevate you. Ashley turns to leave, then pauses and looks back at Patricia one final time. You know what the real tragedy is? You had the chance to be part of a family that loves unconditionally, that celebrates each other's successes without keeping score, that shows up when it matters. Instead, you chose to destroy it because it didn't meet your superficial standards. She addresses the entire restaurant, her voice carrying clearly. These people convinced me to abandon my parents on my wedding day. They used my parents' money to fund a celebration my parents weren't allowed to attend. I want everyone to know what kind of people they really are. Derek stands up frantically. Ashley, stop. You're embarrassing yourself. She smiles for the first time in days. No, Vidic. For the first time in months, I'm not embarrassed at all. I'm proud to be Linda and Thomas Harper's daughter. I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to earn back the love I threw away. She walks out of the restaurant with her head held high, leaving Derek and Patricia to face the stares and whispers of the other diners. Derek and Patricia sit in stunned silence at their table as the restaurant buzzes with whispered conversations about what everyone just witnessed. Other diners are clearly talking about them, some still recording with their phones. The elegant breakfast they were enjoying has turned into a public humiliation. Derek slumps in his chair, finally understanding that his manipulation has cost him everything. Mother, what do we do now? Patricia maintains her composure, but her hands shake slightly as she sips her coffee. We salvage what we can, Derek, but I'm afraid your wife has made her choice. Derek stares at the wedding ring Ashley left on the table, a symbol of the marriage that lasted less than 24 hours. Around them, the restaurant slowly returns to normal, but Derek knows that word of this confrontation will spread through their social circles quickly. Their reputation, which they valued above everything else, is now irrevocably damaged. Meanwhile, Ashley is somewhere out there trying to find her parents and repair the damage they caused. For the first time, Derek wonders if he chose the wrong side. 3 months have passed since the wedding disaster that changed everything. Ashley drives through the countryside on a crisp October morning, her car packed with boxes and a renewed sense of purpose. She spent the last 90 days tracking down her parents, who had retreated to her Gray Tant's cabin in the mountains to heal from the devastation of their daughter's betrayal. It took weeks of phone calls, letters sent through relatives, and persistent visits to family friends before she finally discovered their location. The divorce papers from Derek were finalized last week, but that legal ending feels insignificant compared to the real work she's been doing. Understanding how she lost herself so completely and figuring out how to earn back the love of the two people who matter most. The woman driving this car is fundamentally different from the bride who prioritized status over family just 3 months ago. The mountain cabin sits nestled among golden autumn trees, looking like something from Postcard. Ashley parks her car and sits for a moment, gathering courage for what might be the most important conversation of her life. Through the windows, she can see warm light and movement inside. Her parents are here, in this peaceful place, probably still healing for what she did to them. She's rehearsed this moment hundreds of times over the past 3 months, but now that it's here, she feels like that 7-year-old girl who used to run to her parents when she made mistakes. The difference is that this mistake was so much bigger, so much more hurtful, that she's not sure if running to them will be enough. She takes a deep breath, picks up the handwritten letter she's been carrying for weeks, and walks toward the door that leads either to forgiveness or final goodbye. Ashley knocks softly on the cabin door, her heart pounding so loudly she's sure it can be heard inside. When the door opens and she sees her mother's face for the first time in 3 months, both women freeze. Linda looks older, more tired, but her eyes still hold the same love they always have, mixed now with wariness and pain. Ashley, Linda whispers, her voice breaking on her daughter's name. Mom, Ashley replies, and suddenly she's crying harder than she has since this whole nightmare began. They stand facing each other across the threshold, mother and daughter, separated by 3 months of silence and a lifetime of love that was nearly destroyed. Linda's hands flutter toward Ashley as if to embrace her, then stop halfway, unsure if physical comfort is welcome or appropriate. The silence stretches between them, filled with everything they need to say and everything they're afraid to hear. Inside the cabin, Thomas stands near the fireplace, his work-worn hands hanging at his sides as he takes in the sight of his daughter. The man who taught her to ride a bike, who walked her to school on the first day, who called her princess, even when she thought she was too old for nicknames, looks at her with a mixture of love and uncertainty. Daddy, Ashley says, and his composure nearly breaks. They've always been each other's soft spot. The tough construction worker who melted for his little girl, and the daughter who thought her father could fix anything. But this isn't something that can be fixed with tools and determination. This requires something much harder: forgiveness, trust rebuilding, and the slow work of healing relationships that were nearly destroyed. Thomas takes a tentative step toward her, then stops, unsure of his welcome. The three of them stand in the warm cabin, surrounded by the silence of mountains and the weight of everything unsaid. Ashley sits across from her parents in the cabin's living room. The handwritten letter she's carried for weeks now lying on the coffee table between them like a bridge she hopes will carry her back to their love. I know sorry isn't enough, she begins, her voice shaking. I know that what I did was unforgivable, and I know that you have every right to never want to see me again. Linda and Thomas listen in silence, their faces showing the pain that 3 months haven't fully healed. I spent 3 months figuring out how I became someone who could do what I did to you. Someone who could be ashamed of the 2 best people I know. Someone who could throw away 26 years of love for the approval of people who were using me. She picks up the letter with trembling hands. I wrote this for you. It explains everything: how Derek manipulated me, how I was stupid enough to let him, and how I plan to spend the rest of my life making it up to you. Linda takes the letter with careful hands, as if it might disappear if handled too roughly. As she reads Ashley's words aloud, the pain of the last 3 months fills the cabin. The letter details Ashley's recognition of Derek's systematic manipulation, her understanding of how she allowed herself to be turned against the people who loved her most, and her commitment to rebuilding the trust she destroyed. I know that you spent your retirement savings on my wedding, Linda reads, her voice breaking. I know that Dad took a second mortgage on a house. I know that you sacrificed everything to make me happy, and I repaid you by telling you that you weren't good enough for your own daughter's wedding. Thomas wipes his eyes as Linda continues reading Ashley's acknowledgement of their love, her recognition of their worth, and her desperate hope for a chance to earn back what she threw away. When Linda finishes reading, the silence in the cabin is thick with emotion. After an hour of difficult conversation, Linda gets up to make coffee, and Ashley follows her into the cabin's small kitchen. The simple act of working together, Ashley getting mugs from the cabinet, Linda measuring coffee grounds, feels both familiar and fragile. Derek filed for an annulment, Ashley says quietly as they work. He claimed fraud because I wasn't the person he thought he was marrying. Ironically, he was right. Linda pauses in her coffee preparation. And how do you feel about that? Ashley manages a small, sad smile. Relieved. The person he married wasn't really me anyway. It was someone he created by convincing me to be ashamed of everything real in my life. They work in comfortable silence for a few minutes, the rhythm of preparing coffee together, a tiny step back toward the easy companionship they once shared. It's not forgiveness yet, but it's not rejection either. It's a beginning. As evening falls, the three of them share a simple dinner around the cabin's small table. The conversation is careful, tentative, but genuine in a way Ashley hasn't experienced in months. Thomas tells her about the construction project he's been working on. Linda updates her on her accounting clients, and Ashley shares her plans for rebuilding her life and career. I've been seeing a therapist, Ashley admits over dessert, someone who specializes in manipulation and emotional abuse. I need to understand how I became someone who could hurt you like that. Thomas reaches across the table and covers her hand with his work-roughened one. Princess, we just want to understand too. We spent 3 months wondering where we went wrong as parents. Ashley turns her hand to squeeze his. Dad, you didn't go wrong anywhere. I did. I let someone convince me that your love wasn't enough, that your sacrifices weren't valuable. That was my choice, and it was the worst choice I've ever made. By the fireplace that evening, Ashley pulls out a folder of financial documents she's been carrying. I want to show you something, she says, spreading papers across the coffee table. I've been working 3 jobs for the past 3 months, and I've started paying back what you spent on the wedding. Linda and Thomas look at the payment schedules, the budget plans, the evidence of their daughter's commitment to making financial amends. Ashley, you don't have to, Thomas begins, but she cuts him off. Yes, I do. You spent your retirement savings because you thought it would make me happy. The least I can do is make sure you get every penny back with interest. She shows them her projected timeline. 4 years of aggressive saving and extra work to restore what they lost. I can't give you back the time you worked extra shifts or undo the stress you went through, but I can make sure you're not financially punished for loving me. The next morning, as Ashley prepares to drive back to her life and the work of rebuilding, the goodbye feels different from any they've shared before. It's not the casual see you next week of their old relationship, nor is it the devastating I may never see you again that she feared 3 months ago. It's the careful, hopeful goodbye of people who love each other and are committed to healing what was broken. Linda hugs her daughter tightly, whispering, "Call us when you get home safely." Thomas presses a thermos of coffee into her hands for the drive, just like he used to do when she was young. We're proud of you for coming here, Princess, for taking responsibility, for fighting to come back to us. Ashley gets in her car with tears in her eyes, but they're different tears than she's cried in months. These are tears of hope, of possibility, of a family that might be stronger after being broken. The road ahead is long, earning back trust, rebuilding relationships, becoming someone worthy of their love again. But Ashley drives toward that future with determination and gratitude for parents who never stopped loving her, even when she stopped loving herself. What would you do if you were Ashley's parents? Could you forgive your child after such betrayal? Drop a comment about where you're watching from and whether you think this family can truly heal. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more incredible stories about family, forgiveness, and second chances.